Welcome, everybody, to a special mini-series, I guess if you want to say, on the holidays. Specifically Christmas. And I'm making this video because something has been lost in the world that we're living in today. People have forgotten the meaning of Christmas and have forgotten the meaning of why Jesus came to the earth. So this is part 1 in either a part 3 or 4 part mini-series that I'm doing. And this first episode that I'm doing is called The God That Is With Us. We understand that God created the heavens and the furthest reaches of the galaxies. And while we recognize God in His majesty and His goodness, a God that does not reveal Himself to us, as if to say, "Here I am," can feel distant. If the only God we had was beyond the stars, what good would He be? Especially in times like this. We want a God who is near to us. A God who understands our hopes and our dreams, our uncertainties, and our difficulties. As we turn to the first Christmas, we find a name that is more important than many of us realize. A powerful name that represents an idea that only God could have originated. A name for people to remember the truth about God. And that name, Immanuel, which meant God is with us. Immanuel is a name that reminds us that God is always close. As spiritualists, we know this. We can feel the presence of Spirit with us at all times. And we are given evidence of this with mediumship and spiritual healing. Getting to know Spirit allows us to know God better. But it is more than just these things. Christmas reminds us of 4 important truths. Number 1, God is with us in our struggles. We all have problems. There's no such thing as going from the cradle to the grave with no difficulties. But when we go through problems, sometimes people think that God has left them. Mostly this is because we're hurting so much that we forget how to look around and find Him. But I promise you that He's there. And when you don't know what to do, you know who you can talk to. You know that Spirit is there, and you can turn to them for help. There is a great quote in the Bible, one of my favorites. It's Isaiah 41, verse 10. I'm going to read it to you. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." That's who God is, and that is what Spirit does. God sends Spirit to help us in our struggles. But God is also with us in our sorrow. God doesn't make sorrow go away. Sorrow is one of the many experiences of life. Jesus was known as the great comforter. However, when He died, He said He would send someone in His place to comfort us, and specifically at the time, His apostles. And in a way, what He sent us was actually better than Himself. You see, when Jesus walked the earth, people had to go to him. And he walked in a country that was probably no bigger than the state of Vermont. And so when people needed healing or they needed comfort or they needed Jesus, they had to go to him and they had to find him. However, all that changed because when Jesus died, what he sent us was Spirit. Spirit comes to us. We don't have to go to them. They are taking care of us when we ask for help, and they dwell within our hearts. So when you are dealing with sorrow, you don't need to go anywhere to get help. You only need to ask. And one of the things I have heard from people who are going through sorrow, and you may have heard of this too, people will say something along the lines such as, when I was going through that struggle, I never felt the presence of God more than during that time period. When everyone else goes, God draws near. So God is with us in our struggles, and he is with us in our sorrow. God is also with us in our stumbling. When we screw up or mess up in life, don't get the idea that Spirit or God leaves you. A lot of people pull away from God when they make mistakes in life because they think that they are somehow no longer redeemable in the eyes of God or Spirit. But one thing I have learned is when you mess up and you run from God, God comes running after you. And the message of Jesus is the message of mercy and forgiveness. We may have to deal with the repercussions of our mistakes, but God's mercy is within and without. And that brings us to the fourth point. God is with us in our service. I can tell you as a minister that being called to serve Spirit is one of the greatest things that you could ever do because it's one of the most rewarding things that I have ever done. Especially with all the evil going on in today's world. But however God uses you, whether it is as a teacher or a medical professional or just an accountant in an office, God goes with us. He enhances us and gives us the energy and motivation to go forward. Everything we do is in service to humanity in some way, and service to Spirit, whatever you may be called to do. So to sum it up, we want a God who dwells with us, who understands us, and who knows what it is like to live on this earth, especially in times like this. We want someone who understands our pain and suffering. We want a God who is near. And that is the message Jesus brings into this world when he is born. Symbolically, that God has come into the midst of our suffering to help us face the challenges of life, to show us love and the mercy of God by example, to show that God is not in the distance or some destination or some place that is out there that we need to go to, but instead, right here in the human heart. Immanuel, God is with us. And that is the story of Christmas. I thank you very much for watching this today. And tune in next week when I have part 2 to my Christmas special. God bless.